Okay, here we are coming to you live. My name is Dominic Stokes. I'm here with Amanda Zimmerman. This is our second podcast, videocast, testing the waters experience to discuss things in a more on the fringe way um, as it relates to Lean Six Sigma, Lean, Black Belt certification, anything that you would experience in the workforce when it comes to just Lean in general. Today, we're going to be talking about credibility, and Amanda brought in a special guest. We're going to go through three parts, essentially. The first one with us defining what we think credibility is. The second part, bringing in Amanda's guest, CJ, and seeing what his thoughts are. And then the last part, seeing if there's any biases that exist today for marginalized groups, or maybe there's something else that we learn about from the people in the chat that participate. Amanda, anything else to add to that?
No, I think that's a good summary. I think, last time when we were chatting, you brought up this topic and it made me super uncomfortable just to
Yes.
think about credibility, talking about credibility. I mean, it's such a big piece of Lean Six Sigma, and it relates to so much of like, can I do this? Am I going to get paid for this? Are people going to listen to what I have to say? And I know there was a long period for me where I really struggled with credibility and how to be credible. And I feel like I typed that in a million different ways online. And I think that the definition of credibility is the quality of being trusted and believed in.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I
That's
agree
like
with
the
that.
Merriam-Webster definition, the quality of being trusted and believed in. So I know like when I read that 10 years ago or 5 years ago, I know I was like, how do I become trusted? How do I become believed in? Right. And I think now I have such a different perspective than I did then, but I know this is something that we struggle with. And especially
Mm-hmm.
like being live like this or being on video, like people might see this as credible or not credible,
Yeah.
and what are those qualities?
I think that there's a small part of this that is influenced earlier than we have the ability to form with our own minds because of where we
Mm.
work. So if you're in a manufacturing facility, the bigger question is, are you ISO certified, or are you
Yeah.
certified for, are your products certified to be water tested or water rated at a certain depth? And there are all of these like larger conglomerates and companies that say like, yes, you've passed our rigorous tests. Even when I was going to engage to like propose to my wife, it was like, is the diamond GIA certified? And I'm like, who are these people? Like, what do they have to say about it? I think it looks kind of nice,
Yeah.
but there's a whole reason for that. There are counterfeit markets, gray markets. It's all in an effort to protect, but sometimes that feels so large that you feel
Yeah.
that you need those credibility, those accreditations and accolades as well to say, I know what I'm talking about too. So I'm sure later we'll get into that.
Yeah. Well, and
But
I know one of the things you said to me, and hopefully you're okay with sharing this, is just that, when I asked you, hey, let's do something together, or let's work on something together, one of the things you'd said was you didn't ask me where my certification was from. You didn't ask me how many years of experience I had, right? Because, I mean, to me, one of the things being in the industry for a certain amount of time that I think is probably hard for like recruiters and things that are new to continuous improvement is like, if you get it, when you talk to people, you see people that also get it,
yes,
right? And you
yes.
just like kind of have this instant observation that okay, they're on my team.
Mhm.
So my partner, for example, like we met up with one of his friends a few years ago, and he was talking about some software bugs that, or some software that he releases, and they changed the release date to be on Mondays because
Mhm.
when they were releasing it on Friday, they had too many bugs, and then they would have to come in and work overtime. So now they release it on Monday so that they don't have to work overtime. They can fix the bugs. But then, like after we left, he said, I don't think that that was a good way to do it, right? Because all that they're doing is they're moving this period where they're dealing with the bugs. They're not actually dealing with these bugs, right?
Yes.
And I think it's through those stories or those moments that you have with people that you go like, this person gets it. Maybe they don't know the jargon, maybe they don't have to have the certification, but they get it.
Yes. And I think finding and collecting those groups of people that do get it builds to having a credible team and a team that trusts, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is a very strong team in the long run. And it's funny that you said that because the very first thing I wrote down about credibility is it goes without saying in certain situations. You just know that like
Yeah.
somebody has it, and you might not know
Somebody
everything
has it.
there, but like you trust them for the right reasons.
So what is a quality to you? What are like qualities of credibility? How do you know someone is credible? Like, what are some of those qualities?
I made
So
a
you
little
just
list.
know it. Oh, you did. You made a
I did.
list. Good.
I have to explain everything to more than just one detail, but if I had to state it simply, and I feel that this is the genesis or the origin of somebody being super credible, it's that they are able to ask questions, just flat out, because I feel that that leads into so much more. They had to ask the right questions to learn it. They had to ask the right questions to stay up to date with it. They had to ask the right questions to different types of people and levels of people and organizations, because whenever you see them interacting with those people in the future, you can tell that they're comfortable around those people. And that's what I like to call street cred. It's not that I've coined that term, but like for somebody to be able to go to where the work is happening and ask a question and you see that they haven't done that, this isn't the first time they've done that. You know that they're really good at asking questions. They're good at approaching different types of people. And there's something that I saw on LinkedIn the other day that also reinforces going out to see the work that actually happens. I feel that really credible people realize that metrics do not equal reality. They're close. The equation was metrics are less than reality, and that was written by Bob Emiliani on LinkedIn. So a small shout out to him. But I think that that makes more sense too, because we know that computers aren't 100% fail safe, and the signals that we get from them aren't. So it's nice to back that up with what's really happening in the real world.
Yeah. So on the flip side, because a lot of what I'm hearing, with that is kind of like this Brene Brown perspective that trust is built through a lot of tiny, small actions where you build that trust over time, right? It's not like a big grand gesture. It's something you have to build. And so, what you're saying is really those activities that you can observe that you see over and over again, this person building that, right? That they're creating that trust with you. They're putting that marble in the jar. But on the flip side of that, and what she talks about as well, is how you break that. So are there things, well, she talked about, how it's very easy to betray that trust and that you have to start over, right? That empties the marble jar. So
Yeah.
how do you see some of either those, and she talks about like big things like, where you don't respect somebody's privacy and you share the information that they shared with you in confidence, versus like the small things where you can see maybe the operator is unhappy, but you don't ask the operator what's going on, right? And that those are small examples of betrayal that also add up over time. So are there any of those that flip side where you say like, this is where we lose trust, this is where we lose credibility?
Yeah, I think withholding information and then being found out later is the biggest thing. And it's not lying. It's just choosing not to explain a position. And I think sometimes that's difficult whenever large changes are happening in companies or in other aspects of life. Sometimes it's really nice to know that there wasn't an ideal solution and you have to deal with this in the meantime. It'd be really great to know that leaders came to that decision by going through these checks and balances, and it wasn't just, I guess, even if it was emotional, it'd just be nice to know that so that you gain the rest of the support from the group. Because if you don't do that, it's always the back thought in somebody's mind that there really could have been a different solution that had been happening right now. But they just don't know. Maybe you did put the due diligence in. Guest visitor? Do we have a guest?
Yes, I heard the dogs running around and okay, it's fine. It's fine.
Sure?
It just startled me. Sorry.
I'll
Yes,
sum mine up
yes.
into withholding information. I think that's the biggest thing.
I think that goes to also like the bigger thing of like continuous improvement, right? Because we're talking about this all within the perspective of continuous improvement and Lean Six Sigma. And so one of the things I see as a facilitator of continuous improvement is I am the advocate for the process. I'm the advocate for the people that are on the ground. And if I have opportunities to advocate for the process or for the people on the ground and I don't take them, I think that that's a similar bit of withholding information, is not standing up to management or not telling management what's really going on to be that representative. But there's somebody else, CJ Renegar, is with us as well, and I want to bring him into this conversation. He's got many, many years in consulting and continuous improvement, and I'm sure he has a lot of thoughts on credibility, and especially within the consulting world. So welcome, CJ. Thanks for being our first guest on our Lean Six Sigma chat, or Learning to Be Better, or we're not sure yet what we're going to call it, but thanks for joining us.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for the invite. It's, learning, doing this is a first for me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So what do you think about this topic of credibility, right? Working with consultants, like, how do you see credibility built? Because oftentimes, especially when you're hiring new people, you have to kind of assess a consultant in a few minutes to decide, like, is this person
really
going to fit in
salt.
with the client or not?
Yep.
So how do you see this topic?
Well, it's very interesting. I had the pleasure of attending a Harvard course a couple weeks ago, and from a marketing or from a brand, if you're able to have incredible credibility and be perceived as a genius, then you can command a higher market price. So it's very revenue, very favorable to you. But as you become more closer to a commodity consultant, then you're pretty much a body shop rate. So it's and the genius is one column they articulate. Graybeards is another column, and graybeards are those folks that have experience. So it's that bring to it. You'll either pay more for a genius that you trust, and trust is a huge part of it, or someone that's got lots of experience. I think it's also, I think, how you do it. It's being very transparent to your methodology, and and I would say you can tell someone is credible probably with after a meeting with them. Dominic, what you were saying earlier about asking the questions, I think that's very confident people ask more questions, got that experience, and it just comes across. I think if you're insecure, or when I was brand new to consulting, when I didn't know stuff, you either avoid answering a question, or you make up something. And you don't tend to act confident and ask questions.
I agree with that.
I think, one of the things that you said within that is confidence, right? And that level of confidence really helps you to feel whether or not this person is credible. And so I really like, though, this piece that you added too about the commodity versus kind of the graybeards, or these different ways that we can see credibility. Because when I started my career, I had a history degree from CSUB, so California State University of Bakersfield. Who cares, right? Exactly. What is this degree, right? This is kind of like, it's not a great it's an okay university, but it's not, it's not Harvard. It's not Berkeley. And then history, how does that relate to continuous improvement? But now I have kind of the story down, or my perspective on how it actually does relate. But, to me, kind of coming into these spaces with continuous improvement and with consultants, coming in with that, I felt really uncomfortable, right? I felt like, do I belong here? Because I don't have the fancy degree. I might have my Master Black Belt certification, but I don't have kind of that background. So how do you think, like, people that are getting into continuous improvement or want to get into consulting, like, do they need that fancy degree? Do they need that green belt to be seen as, or that green belt from ASQ to be seen as worthy of this space?
I think in many conditions, you need to be able to have something that gets you in the door.
Yeah,
it's a barrier to entry,
but it doesn't keep you in the door. So I think there are certain things, a degree, a Master Black Belt might get you an interview. For example, on a resume, I will definitely interview you, but I've interviewed a ton of Master Black Belts that can't answer some basic questions around Lean. So it's, and your experience, and your degrees, it helps. But I think a lot of people have probably experienced it. There's a lot of people with pedigree that fail, and there's a lot of people that have no pedigree that are very successful.
I guess to answer the other question that you said, Amanda, how do people get started with this? I think it's by understanding one thing well enough to start trying it on your own. Like, I don't think that, and I guess I don't know if I don't think this. The majority of what I've heard from other people say is, you don't know lean if if you just know the tools. It's understanding how the system works, how that orchestra and that symphony works together, and when to implement certain things. And I get that, but you're not going for a higher level job right out of the gate. So it'd be really nice if you knew how to do a fishbone. And if you can do that fishbone with something at home and know for yourself that you know it, so that when you talk to somebody else about it, you know what headers to put at the top of the boxes, and they nod their head and they're like, yeah, he gets it. I don't care what he used it on or she used it on. It's just that you can tell that they got their hands dirty. I think understanding like where you're at in that whole ladder of, if I'm starting out, what's stopping you from watching a YouTube video about a tool, or like messaging somebody that you look up to on LinkedIn about a tool, and then just trying it, finding some way to kind of make it real.
I think that's interesting because I see the flip side a lot, which I see a lot of people with different classes that I've taught, or different people at organizations that tell me, I'm not like, I'm not a consultant, or I'm not ready to go into consulting because of these things, or I don't know that I could get a job in this because of this. But what's fascinating to me is the people that usually have that perspective have a ton of knowledge, have a ton of experience using these tools, and are the ones saying, like, does this actually qualify as experience? Like, I think there's a huge opportunity for us also to better describe our experiences and continuous improvement, because oftentimes I think we deflect that, like, I was a part of this big change that we made in our organization, but I don't know anything about continuous improvement, right? I know the tools, and yeah, we used a little bit of root cause here. Or, oh, well, yeah, I did do a control plan, but I haven't really done a project. We just saved thousands of dollars or hours. And you're like, this was a great project. Or even at home, even like stay-at-home moms that you talk to, that you're like, you've done so many awesome things to make your home more efficient.
Correct.
Why don't we talk about those? Like, how do you see some of those pieces, either of you? What do you think?
Well, keep in mind, I think there's will and skill, and someone that's passionate about problem solving, at home, that's, to me, is the more important thing that I want to find, is people that are passionate. Problem solving, being a detective, is not like being a police officer. And many people do not want to be a detective every day and handle that ambiguity. But some thrive on it and love it. So, and if you enjoy it, I think that comes through for credibility as well.
Just finding a way to kind of translate that to the industry that you're working in. Maybe it just means one more step. If somebody's thinking about, how can I make the things that I do at home make sense on a resume if I'm going to apply for this job? Maybe this is the wake up call for somebody to just reach out and find somebody else on the internet that can help you craft that story.
And how often do we take a chance on people that are just right there on that edge, and you're not sure? Maybe they're missing something. And what makes us take chances on folks? I think what makes us take chances on folks is their energy, their passion, or they wanted to learn, they tried it at home, I don't have it yet, and they're humble about it.
Yeah. Do you think, though, that, I'm sorry, Amanda, one thing for CJ, do you think that the timeline of when you have to get something done plays into when somebody's willing to take a chance? If you know you have a couple of years to finish a certain project, that's fine. If the project didn't go well and you have stakeholders asking questions, it's like, it's time to bring in the person that can get it done now. But even then, sometimes it's not the right thing to do.
I think that is a big deal. I really do. I think that we can be reactive in our corporations and our organizations, and then we need somebody now that is doing this. So versus being more proactive. even in my own career and company, it's how can I be looking out 6 months, a year from now?
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think that career path is really important in terms of consultancies. Like a lot of consultancies, I think, have started to create more of, I don't want to say entry level, but like a lower level consultant that can come in and help support projects that they can build up to get to that, so that they don't get maybe in those spots where they need someone tomorrow. Right.
Mhm.
That's really good.
and take people existing in companies and put them into different roles. There are
Yeah.
people that are passionate in the organization that see it every day, but are not being utilized.
And a lot of those people, do they recognize how valuable they are? You know, like you see these people that are holding the whole ship up and doing just these amazing things for their organization, using continuous improvement
Mhm.
all along the way, but they don't even realize what they've done for the organization.
I go into a lot of places and the admins are using sticky notes and using some best practices that they've never had any training on it, but they've just learned through iterations and problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a small tangent. It's kind of on path to maybe parallel. That's why I love these like methodologies and tools, because even like out of your own pressure, you could still create some of those same processes. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's so second nature that we're already doing it. This is just, there's some people that have formalized it for their specific industries, and those tools just became a little bit more popular on social media. Like, to use today's terms, like,
Mm-hmm.
it worked really well for them, and a lot of people want to do it that way. But everybody's been doing it. It's not something that's brand new. It's just a better way of visualizing something, or
Yeah.
a way to kind of take something down in bite-sized chunks and really assess root cause or something like that.
Exactly.
CJ, thanks so much for joining us. I think we're going to start to wrap up here in a minute, but I wanted to ask you, for a consultant, maybe that's new, that's had continuous improvement experience, but hasn't quite made that leap into consulting or wants to grow their career. What's your tip for them to gain credibility? How can they work on their credibility?
I would say increase their experience of doing things, even if it's for uh, an organization or a part of their job now, is that you get better with practice and doing the different tools. There's so many lean tools that I bought off the shelf and then did the same math or created an experiment of just going through it so that I embedded it into me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or I sat at the airport and I got my stopwatch out and I just measured the time from last passenger off to first passenger on, and I kind of did it a spaghetti diagram on myself or in a
Mhm.
lunchroom. So just take one of the tools and just experiment with it.
Mhm.
And that's awesome, because even if it is, you know, you're getting off the plane or making your dinner, now you have an example of a project that you did that you can share with an employer that's not proprietary,
Mhm.
right? That you can say, here's some of the cool stuff that I've done with these tools. I can't share with you maybe some of the projects at my work, but I can show you how I've used these tools at home.
Well, and I think it lays the groundwork. When you work out, you train muscle memory. And I think when you do these
Mm-hmm.
experiments, you're training your brain to start thinking like this. So after you do it like years and years, you can walk into a plant and see things. You can see the matrix.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Learning to see. That's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, CJ. We appreciate you joining us, and thank you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome. Y'all have a great night.
Thanks,
All
CJ.
right. We'll see you later. So, Dominic, what do you think? Do you think that we came to a conclusion on what qualities make up a credible continuous improvement person?
Yeah, I do. I think it's the just do it, ask the questions, and
Mm-hmm.
understand what the barriers to entry are. If you do need a certain certification to get your foot in the door, you got to get it. But just like CJ said, it might not keep you there. You still may have to prove yourself time and time again. And don't
Yeah.
lose it. Don't lose
Yeah.
the trust that you've built.
And I think one thing that's funny, as we kind of took on this conversation, that came up for me, was in this period where I was like trying to build my credibility and trying to figure out ways that I would appear more credible. Not necessarily that I felt like I was credible. I had the experience. I could do the work, but actually getting others to see me that way, I felt was a challenge. That was my perception, whether that was real or not.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the challenges that I had, or that I thought I had, that when we talked about this came up for me, was really like how I present myself as a woman. And there's a book that I read called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office, where it had a lot of little things like you should have your hair back, right? This is something that kind of helps you. Or you should wear more of a, a suit, or, whatever that was. Like, I had those little tips about like how I dressed and did my hair.
Mm-hmm.
But I also had this survey or research that had been done that a professor had shared with me a few years ago that was on like a research project that they did to see which women, just from like a visual, were more credible and trustworthy. And they did this like the level of makeup that they were wearing. And so the women that people said were significantly more trustworthy and credible were the ones that were wearing like the most makeup.
Really?
So yeah, so this is something, and this was, I think, about 10 years ago that this research came out. So all these things kind of going in my head, and this first impression as well, right? That like first impressions stick with you, and they're like roadmaps in your brain. And to change your first impression, you actually have to like take down those roads in your brain and build new roads. So like that same professor talked about this being physically taxing, right? That you're like physically doing something to your body. So my perception of all of these factors was that to appear most credible, what you needed to do was make the best first impression. And then after that, it was okay if you didn't wear makeup every day or have your hair back, as long as like that first impression, you kind of like checked all the boxes. Now, I don't know that that's real, but like, it's very, very like, I feel like not the greatest, right, advice or like thing to do. But it's funny because it's something that's like pervasive in my head, that like the first time I meet someone, I need to appear really credible and I need to check these boxes. Even though for me, like day to day, that's not how I necessarily operate.
See, I feel that would just get found out very easily if in the future, aside from
if you couldn't live up to it. Right.
Yeah, like you have to be able to walk the walk every single day. And that's where what I was going to talk about with being any sense of minority. No matter where you work, there's always going to be some aspect of it. And I really think that consistency is the thing that can maybe not change hearts. That might take a while, but at least it's easy to keep up with. We're not saying to like do some grandiose, huge stage entrance that takes a lot of time to maintain. It's making sure that you're doing the same things every single day, following through the same way. And I guess when faced with making a decision that a lot of people don't agree with, still following through and being willing to forgive if other people want to join that quest later. The thing that I'm thinking of in my head to stop being vague is when I started Kanban in one of my previous jobs, there was a huge uproar of how this was going to ruin everything. And it wasn't even for anything big. These were zip ties and small wire terminals. But then later on, whenever that same person that was one of the biggest enemies of starting Kanban asked me to put something on Kanban that he wanted to put on Kanban, it was as if he never said no. I would love to do that. Give me something else tomorrow if you could think of it. I think having that aspect of like short-term memory loss to still prove that you're as enthusiastic as you were the first time you did it, or you're as consistent as the first day that you came into the office. I think that just speaks a little bit more to people and makes them reflect, to see that you're really serious about what you say.
Do you think that there's a harder track for people of color or women to show that they're credible?
I think that you can get into a double whammy situation. So yeah, if you come in without the credentials and you're not seen as being the same, yes. But all the more reason for you to stay consistent and try to prove through time. Be that example. Be the way that they think of the stereotype as they continue to see it in the world moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's inspiring, but it's very taxing. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't jump into that if there were a lot of other things going on in my world. But if you have the time and energy to put into it, why not?
Well, and I think you can get caught up trying to show yourself as credible and missing the actual core that gets you there.
The makeup.
Right? Like you can try to check the list, but that's not actually how you're going to get. It's going to be those little moments where you show the person consistently, like you're saying, this is who I am, and this is how we're going to get to where we need to go.
I agree. Yeah. I think that once you do that for yourself, even if you don't do that every time, you'll continue to look back on that moment as like a cornerstone of, wow, like this is when it really worked. This is when I really proved myself to other people and was able to gain trust so that they could do something that they didn't have to do.
Yeah.
And that's going to be different for everybody. Mine was getting a group of people to stay overtime when I was 23 on a weekend so that I could test out like a new line configuration. And it was terrible. But they stayed because I asked them. And if I were to have asked them when I first started, there's no way they would have done that. So it was sometimes they don't even want to see. Sometimes, if I could add one more thing, sometimes they just want to see that you can fail just like them. Sometimes people really like whenever they see that you can be vulnerable in an aspect. And in those moments, you're not doing it in a way to show that, like I was going to fail anyway. I just wanted them to see me fail. Like you have to still physically try to do it and really push yourself and show that you're upset whenever you don't make it. But sometimes people see what you like. They see you leave it out on the field, for lack of a better phrase. And then they respect that you were able to kind of like show your blood and sweat the same way they do every day in different ways.
Well, this has been a super interesting conversation, Dominic, and thanks, CJ, too, for joining us. If you have any thoughts if anybody watching has any thoughts on what qualities make somebody credible or what qualities don't make somebody credible, we'd love to see that or hear about that in the comments. I think, so we're going to do at least one more of these, if not more. And I have a suggestion for our next topic. So I don't know if you're going to like it, but we've done one on a tool. We've done one on a topic. What if we do the next one on a problem like the laundry? So we've heard a lot about Dominic's laundry here in terms of some of the efficient ways that he's attacked it. I have a huge problem with my laundry because I'm going from the US to New Zealand and they don't really like to use dryers here. So I have a whole different constraint that I've never had before in that the dryer it just doesn't take 2 hours to dry. Now I'm talking about days or 18 hours to dry my clothes. So I'm curious to see kind of what our thoughts might be on some of those efficiency opportunities, and maybe you can bring some pictures of your laundry as well.
All right, I just wrote that down. It's happening. Lean laundry.
Awesome.
Lean laundry is
lean laundry.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, so our next topic will be lean laundry, and we'll probably come back in about 2 weeks and chat more about that. So please stay tuned and look out for that one. Thanks so much, Dominic.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. Thank you again, CJ.